Hello everyone, and welcome to one of the last videos in our Chess960 series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler, and today we're going to have a look at probably Leela's finest game of the whole Fischer Random tournament at the TCEC. The game it won against Stockfish in the final. This was at the very start of the final, where Leela was establishing a 2-point or even 3-point lead even at one stage. Unfortunately for Leela fans, it didn't keep up, and Stockfish, as always, came through at the end. But this was a fantastic game. So let's have a look at this position. There is a group of positions in Chess960, Fischer Random, where the pawn on g7 is extremely weak, well, unprotected, hard to protect, and white has a knight on h1 or f1. That's Berserk beating Wasp rather brutally there, which can come to g3 and then to f5 or h5. And this involves a great deal of disruption for black to defend the pawn on g7. And yeah, this is one of those positions. And well, I normally say that moving the knight early is not so clever for white. You might as well wait a little while, see how the pawn structure pans out. But this is one of those exceptions where moving the knight to g3 is a very strong move, threatening knight to f5 or knight to h5, and then funnily knight takes g7 checkmate. Now the first move of the book was 1c5, so that was kind of forced on Komodo. What would Komodo have done if it had had the choice? Actually, in some games against Leela that I ran just on my own hardware, so that's 18 threads, Intel i9 for Komodo, and Leela on a 40B network on a 2080 card. So probably pretty good hardware odds for Komodo. Komodo was playing the move f6. And the idea is that after knight h5 or knight f5, either the king can come to f7 or the rook can come to f7 to defend g7. So yeah, I mean that's not a bad way of doing it. So I mean the game's continued c3, c6, bishop c2, attacking h7, g6, e4, e5, a4, a5, f3, followed by d4. I mean white's got a slight space advantage, so you know, definitely a slight to clear advantage for white, but nothing too amazing. So that would have been by far the best move to play f6, I think. But c5 was the book move, and this rather commits black to a pretty fraught defense of the g7 pawn. Very ingenious as well, because after knight h5, black plays queen e5, attacking the knight on h5, and also defending the pawn on g7. Very clever defense, but somehow a little bit risky. The key point in this, it's getting tactical right from the start. The key thing is which unstable piece is going to prove the most unstable. Is it the queen on e5 or is it the knight on h5? I mean, afterwards, the knight on h5 can be chased away by a move like g6, for example. But, of course, the black queen on e5 can be attacked by f4, by knight d3. We could even maybe throw in a pawn sack with d4. You do have the feeling, really, that, yeah, you know, that the black's queen is going to be the most vulnerable in this situation. But, of course, you know, the queens always have this great ability to roll with the punches. You know, you get hit a few times by some pawns and some pieces, but you just find a square, and then afterwards you manage to kick back the knight. So yeah, you know, I mean, it's not totally clear, but it's, you know, it is pretty clear that that white's in the ascendancy here. Now, I mean, the interesting thing about this was that you know, playing all these games, you know, Leela was scoring very, very heavily, certainly from this position onwards. Whereas as black, Leela was managing to hold quite a few draws against Komodo, and this is Komodo 2.6, so you know, the latest version. So yeah, I mean, again, it's quite noticeable, really, how strongly Leela plays this with white. You know, it's one of those positions, I guess, that Leela just evaluates better than other engines. So G4 was Leela's idea, not an obvious one, but a pretty nice one. I mean, it defends the knight on H5, and it also takes away, the F5 square from the queen. So it just means that when you hit black with F4 or with knight D3, black's got a few less squares to escape to. E6 played. Just remember that a move like G6, just trying to work out exactly which way. I think there's multiple ways of doing it, but a move like knight D3, for example, could be killing here, because as if the queen moves away from this diagonal, we just go knight G7 checkmate. So serious threats here. So partly this is why black plays E6. It's actually to give black the idea of playing bishop h4 check in reply to f4, but it also means that knight takes g7 check is no longer mate because the king can move to e7. So and it's not so clear. I mean, white could take this pawn on g7, black plays king e7, and white's wasted a lot of time with its knight. So it might not be 100% clear. There might be some compensation for black somewhere. Although of course black's also moved its queen a lot, so it's not 100% clear. I mean, all black's always in trouble in these positions, but not necessarily 100% clear. So knight d3 was played. f4 would be met by bishop h4 check, takes, and now queen d5 threatening queen h1. Well, I mean, if you look at white's position, you start to wonder a little bit, what was all this play about, this knight on h5 and hitting the queen? Because, you're looking at the white queen on b1, all these pieces undeveloped here. Yeah, maybe not so fantastic after all for white. So Leela keeps going with development and actually keeps going with the restriction of black's queen. So knight d3 hits the queen, queen g5 to defend g7, and now the lovely move e4, so defending the pawn on g4. And this is quite a crucial moment for black, really. Here Stockfish played c4, which I think is very I mean, the most aggressive line for black. Komodo a few times played the move g6, trying to chase this knight away. But again, Leela played this beautifully again. f4, queen h4 check, bishop f2, queen h3, and then just no fear, knight g7 check, king e7, b3. So just getting ready to develop the queen. f6, queen b2, just really calm. Lining up on this a1 h8 diagonal, queen h6 from black, and now Leela's just played calmly knight takes e6 and bishop f3, and already assessing the position as +2 for white virtually. Quite amazing, really. But I mean, Leela just won a massive amount of games against Dragon from this position. Yeah, I mean, the big problem is that white's threatening f5, bishop c5, queen c3, e5, and look at black's development. It's absolutely horrific. I mean, if you play a move like knight f7, for example, then moves like f5 start being very dangerous because the bishop on e6 is trapped. So just a really very, very difficult position for black. Certainly my engines didn't fancy it. What did we get? c4 was one game, takes, knight b6, check, king e8, c5, bishop b7, queen b5, and already the black pieces are just in all sorts of trouble. This attempt to break free with c4 hasn't worked at all. So c4, was Stockfish's move, and funnily enough, against Komodo, this would actually work fairly well. If Komodo had been white. So f4 played, queen g6, f5. Leela, keeps on gaining time against the queen. I mean, again, it's very tempting, but you always wonder with these things, are you gaining time and space, or are you just sort of weakening your own position? Never clear. E takes f5, E takes f5. This move was not played by Komodo. Komodo was looking either to play the intermediate move bishop d4, which is quite interesting, threatening knight takes g7. Very dangerous as well, but somehow Leela was sort of holding these things. Don't ask me how, but gets the bishops exchanged, castles queenside, bishop f3, g5, and starts to get out really, and Leela managed to hold the draw there. Komodo also tried g takes f5, and again after check, knight f2, queen h6, bishop e2, f6. This is, looks really nasty for Leela. But the key thing is that the queen is badly placed here, very, very slow, and Leela somehow manages to create some sort of counterplay with its pieces. A4, knight d6. You can sort of get castle queenside eventually, and you're sort of surviving. My comment, around move 40 was Leela suffering horribly but saving a draw. That was better than what happened to Stockfish. The interesting thing is that Leela played e takes f5, bishop h4 check thrown in. This is one of Black's big ideas. You get the bishop's exchange, doesn't harm to exchange off pieces, and then afterwards you're freeing a little bit in order to castle queenside there. Bishop f2, queen g5, and now kind of the I suppose the amazing point from Leela in this game. I mean, if you look at the position, it's a bit of a mixture really. I mean, White spent a lot of time harassing the queen. We've got a knight on h5, attacking the pawn on g7, but that's defended, and we've sort of run out of ways to attack the black queen now, and the knight on h5 might get vulnerable. We've got stuff like the queen on b1, rook a1 that aren't really active, and Black's not too far away from castling queenside, so you might sort of say it's not actually too bad for Black this. And if you look at what Komodo was doing game after game from this position, then you'd sort of believe it, right? I mean, Komodo was playing knight c1, and then after knight d6, knight g3, Leela was taking, queen e7 check, f6, pieces are getting free, d3, bishop d5, castles kingside, and knight f4, a4, knight hf7, and Black's position has got some sort of logic to it. I mean, the knight's coming into g5. Actually, this doesn't look so bad for Black at all. It's actually quite decent. But Leela just had a completely different idea, and it's all based on the idea that chasing the queen has in a way has not really been White's main goal. The main goal has been to stand a chance of completely entombing the bishop on g8 and the knight on h8. The bishop on g8 doesn't have any moves at the moment. Black's desperately waiting for f6 to happen. The knight on h8 obviously restricted by Black's own pawn and the pawn on g6. And, the point that, Leela had just seen from ages away is that the whole point is this piece sacrifice. Castles, takes, and now the very important idea, takes, and f6. And, this actually makes just total sense of all of White's play and all of White's position. If Black plays g takes f6, we go knight takes f6, king d8, and c4. I mean, I think that this would still have been Black's best choice, really, because at least this knight gets out to g6. But this was just very easily winning for Leela in lots of my games. Leela starts bringing out the old brilliancies here: b4, queen c4, queen e3, hitting dark squares all over the board. Queen e3, queen h6 threatened as well. Queen takes b4, bishop c2, knight g6, rook b1, and b6 is hanging. Again, it's all the dark squares. They just get exploded all the time by Leela. So you can understand why Black didn't do this. But after f6, Stockfish played g6, and now we get knight g7 check, king d8, and c takes d3, and this incredibly powerful and evocative picture of a bishop on g8 completely entombed by its pawns, and a knight on h8 also entombed by its pawns as well. And the knight on g7 doesn't look that great. It's what sort of scope does it have? But actually that knight is performing an unbelievable task. It's protecting the e8 square, so this rook is pinned down as well. With one knight and one pawn, you're actually restricting a rook, a bishop, and a knight. So, I mean, the interesting thing about it as well is this move c takes d3. C4 was Komodo's choice, and it's good too. I mean, Komodo was winning this position as white. If you force Komodo to play this sacrifice, it sort of started, its evaluation started rising, it started understanding it, but Leela's evaluation was just sky high, many moves ago. But the lovely thing about c takes d3 is that it's all about dark squares. So, this pawn could also come to d4 and take control of dark squares. And this is all white's plan now. White is just going to take control of all the central dark squares and just, push black back and, somewhere invade on e7 or c7, for example. So, knight d6 was played by Stockfish, b4. Freeing the queen, queen's coming out b2 to e5, and b4 also takes control of c5. It doesn't look like it with a move like b4, but you're actually again trying to restrict the queen's movement, the black queen's movement. So queen g5 played, queen b2. We're activating the white queen, we're also taking away e5 from the black queen as well. Rook c8 and then a4, and this was, I think, the part of the game that I loved so much, because having established this bind on the position, what do you do? Are you trying dramatically to burst in or anything? No, Leela's just advancing pawns, gaining space, taking territory away from all of black's remaining pieces. And knight e8 played, quite a funny thing really, that knight g7 isn't possible, fg, and you can't stop white from playing g takes h8 and making a queen, simply because the knight is powerless in the corner there. This very fine move, h4, the idea being that queen takes h4 is met by queen e5, and we're coming into e7 then. And the queen is also covering the g3 square. Again, it's all about dark square control, this position. So queen d5 played, and then a very typical Leela move, g5 played, just cementing that pawn on f6, cementing white's bind on the kingside. And now, seem actually, never quite as extreme as this, I think, but you have seen similar positions, where in AlphaZero Stockfish matches, of course, Stockfish 8 that played against AlphaZero, much weaker than this Stockfish, which is why this is so impressive. But you saw these these positions where Stockfish 8 got completely tied up, and then what was revelatory to me about those AlphaZero games was how AlphaZero finished off the games. It wasn't about crashing through with a huge mating attack. In actual fact, what AlphaZero simply did was to try and exchange as many of Stockfish's remaining active pieces, and then just leave Stockfish 8 with only passive pieces, and then AlphaZero's pieces would just invade and mop up all the bits. And that was really like an eye-opener to me, because against Stockfish 8, I played a lot of training games, and actually I got a lot of very good positions. There were certain openings like the King's Indian attack, the sort of close centre, playing on the wings positions, where you really had a great chance of getting a great position. But I was always trying to finish off with a glorious mating attack, and then just losing to some ridiculously amazing defense from Stockfish. And that idea of there's no mate, you just drain activity from the opponent's position until he's got nothing more to do. That was something I learned from AlphaZero, or really saw manifest in his games. And this is exactly what Leela does. Bishop f3, queen d3, rook a3, giving up the d pawn, but actually, just trying to swap off the opponent's queen. The queen, where can the black queen go? Doesn't have very many squares. We've got queen e5 coming in as well. So black's forced to play knight c4, and then takes rook d5. And the black queen, that was a pretty active piece. It was the piece most likely to cause trouble, either for the kingside pawn structure or for the white king. Exchange now. So, black's only now got a rook and a knight, and how much damage are you really going to be able to do with those? Bit hard to give black any advice here. I mean, in principle, white's just going to go rook e1 and rook e7 if you don't do anything, and then bishop g4, take on d7, get to the 7th rank and just win. So Stockfish starts trying to vaguely attack stuff, but Leela just doesn't bother really. a5 played. Again, this encroachment, gradually increasing your space advantage. A move like rook b4, I just go rook e1, and then come in with rook e7. King c8 shows a very nice resource, because if I go rook e7, you could go rook d8, desperate defense. But you just play this move knight e8. The knight's getting active there, stopping the rook from coming over, and then you're just going to come in rook e7 and rook d7, and just, completely win. Maybe throw in a knight d6 check as well. So king c8 played, b5, encroaching again, stopping, just stopping black from ever thinking about escaping. And now rook d8. Got to be careful. If you'd gone something like rook h4, I'd just go rook c1 check. Obviously, if you block with the knight, I've just got rook c5 check. I'll get my piece back to start with. And if you go king d8, I'll just go rook dc5, and then rook c8 is going to be made. So rook d8 played, king c8, rook d8. That's sort of the most solid. But we go rook e1, rook to f4 from black, king g2, h6, king g3, rook a4, and now knight e8. And what's the idea? We're just going to go knight d6 check, rook c1 and rook c5, and then deliver mate on c8. Black's just completely powerless. So knight c4 was played by black to stop knight d6, and then rook e4. What are we threatening? Well, what are we not threatening? Rook takes c4 and knight d6 check is one idea at the very least. H takes g. Funny that Stockfish was thinking that Leela wouldn't take back on g5, but, well, Leela did. b6. Rook takes c4, takes, knight d6 check, king b8, knight takes c4. And, the game continued just a little while longer. But you can imagine that black's chances of saving this game were not great with a bishop on g8 and a knight on h8. I mean, white's just got so many ways of doing stuff. You could even, probably the most human way would be just to go rook d4 to h4 and then pick up that knight. But, Leela just brought the king in. All of them are good. So, I mean, quite an amazing game. And again, what you like about these games is, in the previous game that I looked at, that was this wonderful knight and opposite coloured bishop ending from Stockfish. You saw that it was only really Stockfish that understood that and found all the moves, the incredible moves to turn it into a win. And, well, analysing this with Komodo as well, you sort of see that Leela really was the only one that really understood, from far away how good this was going to be. And I like it very much because, the whole... You have the feeling that the whole thing that white's doing is just chasing the black queen, but it turns out that it's nothing to do really with chasing the black queen. It's all been to do with gaining space and just entombing these pieces in the corner. And what I like very much about the realization is that theme of just gaining space with your pawns, it continues until the very end. These moves b4, a4, just taking squares away from the queen, knight e8, h4, queen d5, g5, and all with the idea of forcing the exchange of queens and just removing black's active pieces, draining activity from black's position by exchanging off the active pieces. Really classic NN stuff that, as I said, I first really became aware of when I saw the AlphaZero Stockfish games. And that's a skill that Leela masters as no other. And this game is a beautiful illustration of that. And the squeezing just continues, just gaining space, taking room away from all of the black pieces. It's really, really beautiful, and the the end positions that we see there, really completely pitiful, and just like it was amazing that Stockfish beat a 3650 engine in one of those opposite coloured bishop endings with just a knight and an extra pawn. You know, that was just astonishing. You thought, how can that happen? By the same token, you see the black side and you think, how can this happen to a 3650 engine? And the answer is simply that you know, these the top engines like Leela and Stockfish, they have their positions which they just play to, you know, just a stratospheric level, a level that, you know, as humans we can never even you know, hope to emulate or reach. And yeah, you know, from time to time that level is enough to make even the strongest opponent look like a total child. And yeah, in this game it happened here. Really you know, a glorious game. And I think those two games, the ending by Stockfish and this positional squeeze, those were the real jewels of the Fischer Random tournament. So there we are. I hope you enjoyed that. If you enjoyed the video, why not give me a like or even subscribe and join the growing throng who are following the Silicon Road channel. I mean, there's yeah, I mean, well over 100 videos, all about different facets of engine play. You know, opening, middle game, end game, some Chess960 as well, some live broadcasts of the TCEC. So I think well worth following if you're interested in engine chess, or simply you just love really fantastic chess, which is you know, in abundance in engine games. And otherwise, also take a look at the Silicon Road to Chess Improvement, my book, which has just come out, nearly available on Amazon. I think maybe a couple more days and it should be out. Fantastic engine chess and lots of tips about how to train with engines. But you know, thanks very much for watching and hope to see you at the next video.